All right, so we are finally on our next new unit. We're still going to be focusing on the cell, and we'll be at the cell now for the next 2 units before we transition into something more specific inside the cell that is vital to our survival and life. But we have now spent the last unit looking at what are the organelles inside of the cell that allows it to do jobs that allow you then to survive. So we're going to look more specifically at one of the organelles that we kind of brushed over in the last unit, and that organelle is going to be the cell membrane. The cell membrane regulates everything that comes into and out of the cell. So it's going to take in food, it's going to take in water, and it's going to remove waste. Those are three of the things that it has to regulate coming in and out. It provides protection and support for the cell. It also does cell signaling, meaning if something has to come into the cell, there's proteins and carbohydrate chains in the cell membrane that signal for those items that they're going to come in or that they're going to be leaving. We will not be spending much time in this course, regular bio and cell signaling. That is an advanced topic that advanced biology covers. We do not. And then there you see removing waste down here at the bottom. So those are the main 4 functions of the cell membrane that you can write under functions on your cell membrane note sheet. So what really is the phospholipid bilayer or the cell membrane? This is the exact same thing as the cell membrane right here. It's just that's the fancy term for it because bilayer means it's 2 layers. Phospholipids are these individual little structures, and we're going to get into them in detail today. And you'll be modeling them and telling me what they are with marshmallows and Twizzlers also following this activity if you get that far. But they're these little molecules, and molecules isn't even the right word, these little structural components that make up the cell membrane. The membrane by itself, as I said, it is 2 layers. That's considered to be a double layered sheet. So there's a layer and here's a layer. It is a tough, flexible structure that's going to create that barrier. So here's outside the cell, here's inside of the cell. Things don't just easily go through this. Small molecules can, and that's what we'll be talking about in this unit, but our larger molecules are not going to be able to just diffuse across the cell membrane. They're going to have to go through these channels, and that is one of the major concepts that we're going to talk about in this unit. We're also going to look at whether or not the cell has to expend energy to either take in or remove those items. There'll be a different kind of term that you may have heard of before, semi-permeable, meaning that it can allow certain things in and out. So what I was just referring to, some things can just diffuse across the membrane. Others have to go through a channel if they're a large molecule like glucose. So the cell membrane is strong, flexible, provides a very, very important barrier, and it can allow things to move in and out. So phospholipid, if we're going to look at its most basic structure, what is it that makes up the cell membrane? And it's these little guys right here. This is a phospholipid. And because it has the word lipid in it, yes, it has a component to it that is a fat component. And that is this fatty acid tail and a glycerol head. When we looked at lipids, glycerols and 3 fatty acid tails was its monomer, the postage stamp or the flag. The flag is more applicable. That's the same idea, except it's just one of them. Instead of it being this entire monomer for lipids, it's just one small component, and this is what makes up the cell membrane. Okay, so important things about the phospholipid. This top part, what was considered to be the head, it likes water, and that is called hydrophilic. The tails that you'll see here are hydrophobic. So they do not like water. So if I were to drop this into a beaker of water, what would eventually happen is this part would want to be by the water, and the tails would want to be away from the water because they hate water. They're hydrophobic. Those are 2 terms that you'll have to be familiar with using and knowing what they mean because they're going to be prevalent throughout this unit. This is kind of just a side. These are like side facts. Phospholipids, they contain cholesterol. We'll be talking more about that. It gives the cell membrane strength. And proteins. Proteins are going to be allowing things to move in and out of the membrane itself. So a different role for proteins. They're not going to be building muscle. They're working as a channel. And the whole thing is called a fluid mosaic model because the cell membrane is very fluid, but it's mosaic because of all of these beautiful things that are in there. There was a scientist who said, wow, it looks literally like a mosaic painting. So that's what that term means. If you see that in the text that you will be using today for drawing this on your separate activity sheet. So here's the way the phospholipids align so that these tails, again, they don't like water. They hate water. So they're going to be in the inside because we know our cell thrives on water. Our body in and of itself is 75% water, and our cells are a main component of salt and water too. So the tails are in the inside. The parts that like the water, the heads, the glycerol heads, are on the outside. And this structure continues all the way around. Do I have a final image? I don't on here. So that when this cell is completely made, we've got these heads and these tails, and they're arranged in a cylinder so that the insides never ever touch the water because they are hydrophobic. All right, and the last part is the very big picture at the end. So you have this on the back of your note sheet. Note that you're providing a different definition for proteins and what they do now. They're going to aid in diffusion. This is going to be movement without energy, and that's what we'll be talking about tomorrow. And recognizing when cells are going to come into, or when molecules are going to come into the cell. So go ahead and finish that up, and then you can transition into the next activity.